Hi there everybody, this is Coach Rob with the Windy City Fieldhouse and the Windy City Sports Academy again. Hopefully you're here joining us for a little bit of golf. If so, you're in the right place. What we're going to try and do is show you some skills and drills that you can do either inside or out. Okay, so a lot of what we're going to do is going to feature an iron and then also a putter. If we get to it at the end, we'll incorporate the driver, but going off the tee is something we're going to look at last. So if we get there, cool. If not, we're still going to look at all the fundamentals of how to make sure you're taking proper swings and proper approaches depending on your distance, okay? So all we're going to need to start is any club you want. We're just going to stretch it out a little bit, okay? So I've got, just so you know what else I'm going to use, a little driving mat where it's got a rough on one side and it's got a tee on the other. You can probably see it a little bit. I've got a putting green there as well. I'm going to use soft indoor balls whenever I'm doing all of my hitting. And then for my putting, I'm going to go ahead and use real golf balls, okay? So let's just go ahead, take a club, go up. And when you do that, I want you to try and just go behind the head a little bit. And then back down. And then up, we'll do 5 of these. And then back down. 3 more, up. Just opening up the shoulders a little bit. Good, last one, you're gonna hold it up there. And then we're just gonna tilt side to side. If you want, if I'm going this way towards the right, I'm pulling down with my right hand and putting resistance between the club, so it's really stretching out that side of my body. Then switch, same going the other way, pulling down with the left hand, trying to get that added stretch, okay? Feet a little wider, keep your hands there, on the head of the shaft, and on the head of the club, and just twist. Opening up the hips here a little bit. Good, 3, 2, 1. I'm getting tiny little pops in there. I can feel my muscles moving. Go ahead, take that club and put it behind your back. And now we're gonna go ahead and just slowly lift up. It's okay to let your chest lean forward a little bit. Just try not to over-exaggerate. Good. Count to 3, 2, 1, and then drop. So you're going as back as far as you can until you feel a little bit of pressure. Don't go farther than you need to. Again, just warming up the shoulders. Good, we'll go 3 more. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Good, last one. 3, 2, 1. Good, okay, so let's go ahead. We'll get into this more a little later, but let's go ahead and grip our club the way that we would if we were going to the driving range and we were hitting some long balls. When I do this, I'm gonna take my thumb and make sure that it's pointed straight down the shaft. Then I'm gonna take my other hand and kind of cup the thumb, but also continue the line. So if I were to remove my hands, both of my thumbs would make a line straight down the shaft of the club, and I'm here, okay? So all we're gonna do is see if we can get our swing up and through. Up and through. We're not trying to bend our knees, get close to the ground right now. You can let the heels come off the floor just a little bit. The point of doing this is actually to open up the hips a little bit more, but of course to get the arms moving. And we're almost done with this, and then we'll start talking about some ideas, okay? 4 more. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So let's go ahead and just talk about a really easy concept to start. We should maybe start with grip first. I told you a little bit and I showed you a little bit, but just to add on to what I said about the thumbs, you want to have a nice tight grip to ensure that whenever you are starting your swing, you're keeping everything in a nice line, okay? So if I'm here, I'm at a good starting point. Eventually you're gonna start to get a little bit of a bend in the wrists. Boom. But it all starts with making sure that you've got a positive beginning or a nice grip onto your shaft of the club, okay? So if we go ahead and move on from there, what I was going to mention is one of the biggest problems that most golfers have is actually having their club low enough to the floor so that it strikes the proper part of the ball, but not letting their club hit a couple inches behind. So if I could show you that, I'll just take a ball, and I'll do this on purpose. Hopefully everyone can see that there, right? Good, let's go and back it up a little bit. I'll go ahead and put it on my tee, okay? We'll do that. This will be a good marking point. So if I were to be striking the ball in the right point, it would be where the club is under and it's hitting this angled club head, right? So if I were to bring it a little closer, obviously you want to hit right there in the center spot, the sweet spot. If you were to, for example, hit the ball in the wrong location, the spin off the ball or the way that it comes off the club is going to change. So I'll demonstrate that real quick. If you got your ball sitting here and it's hit perfectly like I tried to show you, it's going to go ahead and take the shape of the club face and go up into the air. If you were to hit, for example, that bottom edge instead of the open face of the club, that ball's not going to have the same trajectory. Instead, it's probably just going to go straight forward. All right, and then the last thing I would say is if it hits the top, it's going to have top spin and it's actually going to go down. Okay, so that concept is going to come a little bit more into play whenever we're putting, but let's go ahead and get into this easy drill that I do to help make sure that I am getting a good distance with my arms down through the club and then all the way to the floor. So you would take a dry erase marker and then you would just mark the bottom of your club. Okay, I have a permanent marker there, so I'm not going to actually do it, but if I show you, you have club face, right there on the bottom would be marks of dry eraser. Okay, now the point of that is if you come into contact with the floor, those marks are going to start to go away. So no ball to start. We'll do this for maybe 15 seconds just so you understand the concept. You will have by now taken your Sharpie, your dry erase marker, not a Sharpie, and drawn on the bottom. And it just has to be squiggly lines, that's it. Now if you're outside and you're doing this on grass, great. I'm going to use the rough side of my driving mat, and I'm also using shorter clubs. So you hear that little skiff there? That is making sure that my club is not just boom, just dying in the floor when it goes through. Sometimes, if the ball is right in the middle, I might hit back a little bit. You hear a thud first before contact with the ball. When you're using a real ball, it becomes very obvious. A nice clean strike sounds fantastic, but whenever you hit the grass before you strike the ball, it's almost a deflating feeling. So, you want to go ahead and try. Like that time I was just a little high, right? You want to try and make sure that you were just skidding your club along the bottom. All right? Now the thing also with this is it's not back and forth that you're trying to do it. You're not trying to wipe it away in both directions, okay? You're going to take time to set up. Then you're going to, it doesn't have to be a full swing either, okay? It can be a chip, back and forwards. Then reset. Then I try and do it. And then I reset. Okay? So that's the concept right there. All right? There are other things that you can do to make sure that you are hitting it in the right spot. I've seen some really cool mats that will actually show you the skid of the club as it's gone through, and will show you where you're making contact with the floor. Okay? If I were to just show you, let's see if this is a good demonstration. If the ball is there, right, and I'm trying to hit the ball this way, my club comes down here and then connects. I'm going to get all the friction and resistance from the ground before I hit the ball, right? So if I'm able to hit right there under the ball without hitting the edge, that's going to be that clean strike that I'm talking about, right? So the next thing I wanted to make mention was whether or not you want to try and keep that face of the club perfectly straightforward and back the entire time through the ball. And it's different depending on what scenario you're trying to play, all right? Now what I mean by that is, theoretically, it would make most sense if I am trying to hit a shot straight down a line to also keep my club on the same line the entire time, and then make the ball go straight. However, whenever you try and create that imaginary perfect straight line, it's actually going to go against how our bodies are naturally, turn, all right? There's an arc that is typically in our swing, and I'm going to show you both examples right now, okay? Trying to keep this perfect imaginary straight line would require me to, I hope that it showed really well right there. It would require me to really lean my body over like I'm right now and extend both my arms out. That's in fact the opposite of what we want. Only the front arm, if you're trying to hit a ball in this direction, wants to stay as straight as possible. In fact, that back arm almost wants to hinge at the elbow right away and stay as close to your body as possible until it no longer can. If you're only doing a little chip shot like this, that elbow might never detach from the side of your body, or it might never come too far away. Okay? Now back to that concept. That straight line is making my body lean over. It's a little uncomfortable and I'm definitely off balance. Instead, as you notice right there, I'm coming at a curve, right? Boom. Now, you want to try and have some marriage of the two. Reason being, you get into a lot of problems depending on if the club is angled when you strike the ball. Perfectly centered there, okay? If the club was angled a little bit this way, the ball's not going to go in a straight line, it's going to go diagonal. Maybe I'll do it like this, right? So straight ahead, that's a little bit of an open club face, the ball's going to go that way. If I'm there, a little bit of a closed club face, the ball's going to go in. I'm going to pull the ball, all right? That is much more likely to happen whenever you follow that natural arc of the body, okay? So there's our dilemma. Do we stay straight the entire time, or do we allow our body to naturally curve, okay? The answer is, you've got to find what's best for you, okay? Even down to where you place the ball. That could change the way that you strike the ball and therefore it flies through the air, okay? So it's going to take a lot of trial and error. It's going to take you to find what's most comfortable, but also the mechanics that work well for your body, all right? So what I want us to try and do now is go ahead and take a couple of these shots, and I'm going to try it in both ways, okay? I'm going to try and show you straight back first, and I'm only going to do about a half swing. Straight back first, and at kind of, we'll call it the unnatural line, and we'll see what kind of result I get. And then we'll go ahead and go for more of that curve in the body, okay? So I'm gonna go from what I have is the rough side. If you have a carpet at home, it's perfect. There's also some fairway mats that they have. Those are also perfect. But make sure that you're doing this in the appropriate spot, okay? So just to remind you, I'm gonna go from here. My arms are nice and straight. We talked about the grip a little bit. I'm gonna try and go straight back. That even had a little curve. Straight back, and then straight through. All right, and I'm gonna hit 3 of these. Ready? Okay. It's a little high on that one. Oh, hello, ball. Wow. Good. I'll try and really over-exaggerate this one. Make sure I'm doing a straight line. So it really helps us be able to make sure that the ball is hit in the proper direction. Let's go ahead now. Let me start to go, and you can see it right off the bat, right? Instead of actually staying in frame, I'm coming around and then through. Okay? That one actually hit a little bit off the base of the shaft there. I was still a little on top of the ball though. That's a telltale sign that you're not striking the ball the proper way. So I'll go last one here. Okay? So I personally could have done a better job making sure that I was hitting the ball in the right spot. However, as you noticed, I think it was two balls that went in the opposite direction, right? I think one ball went straight, but 2 balls went opposite. It's all because of how I was coming through on that arc. Sometimes I was coming through and I had not completely squared up the face of the club. Other times I'd come through just a little bit too much. So back to my original point, depending on what situation you're in, you're gonna have to use a different type of swing. Now, we're gonna do more chipping. which is going to be a soft approach to a green, to putting. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and only go to about half of our waist, right? Up to the waist and then back down. We're gonna try and right in the middle of those two concepts, we're gonna try and, because we're only chipping, here's the thought, we're allowing ourselves to keep everything on that straight line, okay? This is gonna change whenever we go off the tee and we want bigger shots, but for now, we're going to think about that grip and maintaining the face of the club staying square the whole time. That was the point that I'm trying to get to, okay? We're going to allow that natural arc to happen just a little bit. Over-exaggerated, club's behind me. We're gonna go right in the middle, okay? So it's almost behind my shoulder. But what we're gonna try and do is always allow the face of the club to be looking straight at the ball, okay? Now, if I were to, the flip side of this, go off the tee for a big long drive, I would allow the head of the club, I'll go here, to open up. All right, so there's the difference. If I'm going for a big long drive, the face of the club is gonna open up and then eventually come back square. Because we're chipping, we're gonna try and keep that face of the club square almost the whole time, okay? We don't need a whole lot of distance and power. Rotating the hands and opening the face of the club is what generates a lot of that power which is needed for the longer swings. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit some of these. Nice. If you can tell, I know it's blue on blue over there, but I've got a hula hoop set up as a target, okay? We're gonna do a little game later on, but for now, if you have a target to shoot at, go ahead, make sure you're lined up with it. And you're trying to hit it, okay? Good, I'll hit two more and then I'll come back and give you a couple more concepts to think about in terms of how it feels once you start that swing. Okay. Last one for me. Okay, so I'll look at you now. Back to that concept of it's gotta work for you. It's gotta be best for you, okay? What I like to do to start off my swing is allow the leading arm to generate the beginning of my power, okay? Well, I shouldn't say to generate power. I should say to ensure that everything is staying in line like we talked about, okay? Now, as I come through, I have a big problem with allowing the face of the club to open up. So I have to ensure that as I come through, I am allowing my wrists to really bring the face of the club back square. Boom. Okay? So the way that I do this is by thinking about those two hands at separate times. I think about the front arm being straight and therefore the wrist being nice and strong to start my swing, making sure everything's in line. However, as I come through, you see there's a little bend there. I, boom, concentrate on that back wrist to really square up and complete the swing, okay? So that would be what I, after a little bit of time coaching, would say is a very common mistake or a common hurdle that we have to get past. So really concentrate on the wrists, especially on this shorter swing where everything that you do can be more in control, all right? Sound good? Okay. Nice. Let's just do one more of these. All right, so we're gonna actually go ahead and take a step back for a second. If anyone is out there trying to help their young golfers along the way, the one thing I encourage you not to do is temper every single swing that your young golfer does with a correction, okay? So what we're gonna move to now is actually a step that I would suggest you do before you actually start hitting the either fake golf balls that are soft and used for indoors, or even real golf balls. I've got a couple of wiffle balls that I'm gonna use, much larger. They're probably gonna come off the iron or the driver the wrong way, but that's really not the point. The point is for the form and the stance. You can start to train the arms a little bit, depending on the age of your golfer, But the really fun thing is if you're outside and you have the means to do so, instead of using wiffle balls, have fun with this and try and use some water balloons. That's something that no matter if the kids are missing 5 times in a row, they're hitting inches behind, they're swinging past the ball, whatever it is, if they actually make contact with a water balloon, that's going to give them the satisfaction to keep going. So I'm going to use 3 of these larger balls, okay? And again, the purpose of this would simply be to start off a fresh golfer and try and give them the opportunity to actually hit some, right? Hitting that teeny little golf ball can be pretty tough. So I'll just go ahead and hit 3 of these. That one came off kind of the same way that my smaller golf balls did, so again, a lot of the stuff I'm using is purposefully done indoors. Well, that was almost in. If you've got the means to do this outdoors, do so. Ready? I'll do one more. Alright, see, that one was what I was talking about. If you saw it come off my club, I was definitely a little open there. So it shot off to the right just a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and finish up with some putting, okay? I'm just gonna move my little putting green I had over. And then we'll talk about a few simple concepts. We'll hit some. We'll talk about a few advanced concepts, and then we'll wrap up. So I've laid my green out already. It's got 3 holes at the end there. Just pad out all these little bumps. So let's start off by talking about where exactly the ball should be placed. Okay? Again, this can vary depending on what is most comfortable for you. Okay? The obvious thought would be to have knees and feet shoulder width apart, bend down, and get your club right in the middle of your feet, right? Well, let's talk about loft on a club, okay? So we talked about a little bit of this before in some of our shorter videos, but loft on the club, if I've got it here and it's nice and straight, okay, and then that line to the ball is nice and perpendicular, we're gonna call that square, okay? The face of the club is square to the ball. Now, naturally, when you start your swing, boom, you go back first, and if we freeze there, the club is doing what we call de-lofting, okay? So, if you were to strike the ball like this, for example, the roll of the ball would go down into the floor, hop probably, and then begin rolling properly, okay? Obviously, that's not how you want to strike it. Once you were to go, let's do this again, back and through, let's freeze it there, now the club is lofted, right? So if we were to strike a ball like this, like we do when we're using a wedge or we're using a driver, you're gonna give the ball an upwards rotation, all right? So if we're putting, the ball will start to go end over end, all right? In fact, what we want the ball to do is if it's here, let's see if I can find a good one. Here, we'll use this yellow ball, okay? I don't know if you can see it, but there's a nice little seam. Yeah, you can kind of see it running through the ball. When the putter strikes the ball, you want that seam to actually stay on its axis and then start to roll. That happens whenever you achieve the perfect degree of loft, all right? Or a nice center point where it's not de-lofted or lofted, right? You want the ball to be able to be struck clean, all right? So now back to where the ball is positioned. If you notice that whenever you set up, your hands, maybe for example, like mine tend to, go a little bit in front, right? You can see an angle there, and my hands are a little bit in front of the club. That means I naturally give a little bit of de-loft to the club. So, if I want to strike the ball with that natural loft, I'm going to put it a little bit in front of my instep of my front toe, okay? That compensates for my hands. Boom. If I were to hit the ball there, it would have a little bit of that motion into the floor and then start to roll. But I compensate, boom, and then I can strike the ball in the proper spot, okay? Now, of course, if I was doing the opposite of what I just explained, that would mean that my club is a little bit in front of my hands. I would naturally loft the club. So if I was doing that, I might position the ball by the instep of my back foot. That way, if I compensate, you see how unnatural that is for me, some people, boom, that might give them the stability they need, okay? So that's a little bit of something to think about in terms of where the ball is even positioned before you start, okay? Now, I'm gonna set up 3 balls here, and I'm gonna try and go for that middle hole, all right? This is the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about. There's 2 ways that I really prefer to aim my putts, okay? The first way would be to come behind the ball, try and line up. You can see here I've got a nice little line that kind of shows you where the ball wants to be struck. I line that up with my imaginary line that I think is going to look really good. Once I do that, I'm getting the club behind me right now, kind of lining it up. Now I'm going to keep the club there and I'm going to come around, okay? Now the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get my head right over the ball. I'm going to line up my putter where I think it was, and now I'm going to look down the green, okay? This is almost like looking down the barrel of the club. That's what I call it. So, looks pretty good. Now, it's got to be a nice natural, oh, just left. A nice natural pendulum feel, okay? When I say that, I mean you want your arms to be nice and together in this, work together, okay? One thing that you're never going to see as a good golfer, bend the wrists and break the wrists, okay? Certainly, whenever you're going for a different approach shot, right? You're on the driver, using your driver, sorry, you're going to bend your wrists. That way the weight of the club, boom, can fall through, all right? Here, though, remember, it's all about trying to keep that perfect square club to the ball and maintaining the right degree of loft, okay? So let's go ahead and hit these last 2 and then we'll sign off, all right? Actually, I'll explain the game as I do this. Let's say that you have, I was using a candle at home actually. What you can do is take maybe 5 balls and set them up, and then hit all 5, see how many you make. Let's say you make 3. Well, you've got 3 points. Then you take those 3 balls you made, they move on to the next round. You're gonna hit those 3 balls, see how many you make. If you make 1, now you got 4 points, but now you only get to take that 1 ball back, right? So, I mean, technically you could have a score of 100. If you start with 5 and you hit 5 in every single time, you can get a lot of points. But if you miss 4 on the first try and only make 1, well, you've got to continue to make that 1 ball in order to score points, okay? My high score when I did this with 5 balls was 11. All right, so that was 1 out of 3 for me there, right? So I'm playing with 3 balls, I would have 1 point, I would take that ball back, start over and try again, okay? So I hope that some of this has been enlightening for you, not too confusing. Some beginning concepts, some advanced concepts. If anything, keep getting out there onto the course, keep trying to take your shots, see what works for you, okay? It's a great game. It can be frustrating at times, but give it a try, and then we'll see you again for more of these Facebook Lives soon, okay? All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.